Welcome to the Level Up with Josh Pratt podcast, where you're invited to learn from my remarkable guest and lead a purpose-driven life. Hey guys, welcome to the Level Up with Josh Pratt podcast. I'm your host, and I'm so happy to be joined by Mike and Julie Rhodes. Mike and Julie, thank you for taking time out of your schedule. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're doing great.
Great.
The sun's shining outside and it's 65. So
yeah, I guess it's not quite nighttime there. Yeah. So they're out west in Las Vegas and we're here in Maryland. We've got a snowy evening. So two polar opposites right here. But man, I'm so excited to visit with you guys just on our pre-call. I know there's a lot of meat on this bone that we can get attacking here. So for those that are just tuning in, we are going to discuss service and how it's played a vital part in their lives and in the lives of their children. So briefly, Mike and Julie, would you mind telling us a little bit about how you guys met and maybe a little bit about your dating experience and how that evolved into a proposal and marriage?
wow.
Do you want me to do that, or are you going to do that?
I'm going to do that because
Okay.
I went to BYU for my undergrads. Yeah, go Y. And I think I got tired of the dating scene there. And so I went back home to
It's just so
Liberty to work on the
exhausting.
farm. It was
Exhausting, all those dates, right, Mike?
all those cookies and cakes and
Ice cream.
no, it was awesome. Good gals. But I think I was just ready for a break. So I went back, started working on the farm. A friend of mine called and said, will you come and go out with my friend's friend? And so I said, yeah. So it was a blind date. And they left school.
It was the last month of high school, right before graduation.
You might need to
So we
tell our
sloughed.
guests what sloughed means because some of them may not know.
So we went to lunch at a pizza place, and she missed a few of her classes.
Okay.
So skipping, maybe it's called skipping school for a little bit. Anyway, I think after that first date, we found out that her family lived next to my family in Liberty, a little teeny town, and we had a lot in common. So
Funny part of that story, when he called to ask me if I would meet for lunch, his friends called him Rocky Rhodes, like the candy bar,
Yeah.
But this was like the early 80s when all the Rocky movies were out, and I thought, oh no, I can't go out with somebody that goes by the name Rocky. And I almost said no, but I didn't, and I'm so glad. Because now we've been married. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary this year.
Awesome. 40 years. Congratulations. Okay.
Thanks.
So, shortly after marriage, you're like, hey, what is our life going to look like? And how are we going to navigate this course? And service became a topic of discussion. What did that discussion look like?
Just a discussion that we wanted to be able to serve in a big capacity in some way at some point in our lives. And we didn't really know when that was going to be. And like you, we had a bunch of kids and trying to keep those kids going. And so it wasn't until our kids got, they were between the ages of 9 and 16 when we seriously had our first big service opportunity. But before that, Mike was a great example with service just in the community, served on a lot of boards and, helped at the local park and things like that. Things that I didn't really know that much about before we got married. And so I just followed him wherever he went and learned a lot of great things about service.
it was always side by side, no following.
Nice.
We were actually at Brigham Young at a family conference, and we were a little bit late. So we went into a class that had some room in it. And the gentleman talked about his experience at an orphanage in Romania. So we went and talked to him after, and he says, that might be a little tough for your kids. So you got to look at Ecuador, and connected us with OSO.
And he only said it would be a little bit rough to take our kids because it was after Chernobyl and some of the kids there in the orphanages were a little bit disfigured and maybe a little bit hard for our 9 and 10-year-old to understand,
Yeah.
you know. But it was interesting because that conference, we'd gone to the Family Expo for years and we always had a list of classes we were going to go to. It was kind of one of our date things, you know, we're going to go to this conference together. And there were a lot of things conspiring to keep us away from that conference, and we were frustrated. And when we walked into that class, it purely was, we have made it here despite all of these trials, and we're not going to get to go into any of the classes that we want to go to, but we're going to walk through the next open door. And it couldn't have been a more perfect open door for us. We needed to hear what that man had to say.
What
And we walked.
Yeah.
There are no coincidences. But yes, we walked out of that and we didn't go to any other classes. We walked out to our car, sat in our car, looked at the card this man gave us for his friend who had just served in an orphanage in Ecuador. And we called him and said, tell us what that was like. We want to know more. And so he shared his experiences with us right then and there. And we stayed in our car and we called the organization that he served with. And they said, well, we're used to taking students that want a semester. We don't quite know what to do with a family of 6. You know, we had 4 kids, ages 9, 10, 14, and 16. And they said, but submit your application and we'll talk about it and try to figure out what to do. And so we did that same day.
So what were some of the challenges, if you remember, that were kind of like keeping you, you know, from where you wanted to be, but do you remember some of those challenges and what they were?
Just go ahead.
Well, work and finances, you know, that's a commitment to go there.
Did you mean challenges getting to the conference?
Yeah.
Work was one of them, though. I couldn't get off work. There was a crisis. I was late.
Traffic, there's always something that keeps you from doing something good. So we were determined.
I think we had decided typically we would go right in the morning. Sometimes we'd go spend the night in Provo before, you know, spend the whole next 2 days at the conference. It didn't work out for us to do that. We had to do some work in the morning. That went on long for me in Salt Lake, so I was late.
It was just life.
Yeah. Well, I love that you guys had you had that stick-to-itiveness, right? Where you just said, hey, we're doing it. We're determined. We're not going to let any of these small hurdles get in the way. Because I think it's so easy to just like throw in the towel, because sometimes like red tape, right? Like when you're wanting to serve and it's like, fill this form out, talk to this person, get these fingerprints, and you're just like, want to pull out your hair. And then, you know, but you know, you stuck to it. So I love that. And it clearly brought forth some great fruit. How long were you guys in the orphanage? I think it was 2009 when you went down there, right?
It was 2003, actually.
Oh, okay.
They asked us to go the summer of 2003, and it was a little bit soon for us. So we said, tell us when your next time is where you have the least amount of volunteers and we'll go. And they said November through February, which is right in the middle of the school year.
Well, and everybody wants to be home for Christmas. So the student volunteers from Rick's and other places were home for Christmas. So yeah, we decided, you know, we'll sell the snowmobiles, the 4-wheelers, whatever we need to do. And we're just going to go down and work in these orphanages for 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Since he mentioned 4-wheelers, I have a great little side story for you.
Please.
We're like, we just need to sell the toys and pay our mortgage up, you know, ahead and some things like that. And we had a couple of 4-wheelers that weren't selling, and we'd done everything we thought we could to get them sold, and we just didn't want to have to worry about them. And so we live on a farm, so we had put them on a trailer out at the end of the road. And one day our youngest son, who was 10 at the time, said, why don't we pray about it? And I thought, oh, that's funny. We've done everything we could think about, but we haven't prayed about it. I'm like, okay, cool. So we prayed about it. And later that day, a man was driving by that was from Idaho, drove past, saw the signs, turned around, pulled back in our driveway. We were home, and he took him for a test drive and said, I'll be back in an hour with cash. I want to take him with me.
Nice.
I was like, we've been trying to sell these for 2 months. Anyway.
One of the many lessons, prayer is real.
Yeah.
I mean, again, that's just a great story because it shares that one, your son was like, hey, is he, we got to pray. Have we prayed? So, I mean, I think that's also a great attribute to you, or I don't know if the attribute's the right word. It's a great nod to you guys as parents, right? That he thought to do that, and it worked out. So he got a little extra dessert that night, right?
Exactly.
So we also had heard, when we left to go down, my son was in high school, and that was a hard thing for him to decide. And as parents, you never put pressure on your kids or make them feel guilty. But we told Jordan,
try not to.
if you don't go, none of us are going.
Ooh.
And so with that little bit of prodding, he said, okay, I'm going to go. He wanted to do a service project for his Eagle Scout, and we were going to collect shoes for the orphans. And somebody said, you know what? No, don't do that. It'll put the local shops out of business. Just buy them from the local shops. Yeah. So he gathered money, and we bought 4 times as many shoes as we could have taken. Nice. So there was a little, we avoided that unintended consequence, but people like to give stuff and have you take blankets or shoes or something like that. But sometimes it's better just to do it locally, support the local economy.
Pump that money into the local town. Yeah, for sure. Good. So wait, did you tell that to your son? Hey, we're not going if you don't go. Was that before or after you sold all the toys?
That was before, because we said, we have this opportunity to go serve, but it's a family service opportunity. Like, we can't, it's 3 months. We're going to move out of our house unless somebody else lives in our house for 3 months, and we're going to move to Ecuador. And the younger kids were like, oh, they had no idea. but for Jordan, that was hard. 16-year-old, he wrestled at high school. It was the beginning of wrestling. And we actually said, talk to your coach and see what he says. And his coach was awesome and said, that's an opportunity with your family you shouldn't miss.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for coaches and leaders that, realize that there's more to life than just school or sports. And that son ended up working in one of the orphanages by himself. It was the toddler orphanage. And, his first comment was, you're taking me to the jungle to die. And when we left, he had the hardest time. These 14, 15 toddler age kids that called him Papa, he sobbed. He didn't want to leave at that point. And so I think that shaped him to the point where, after his mission and now as he's older, has special needs kids, he gets it. And that was, we could have never known what an impact that would have on him.
I mean, from what you guys are sharing with me, it's like you cannot buy these experiences, right? And I have a friend recently that's going through a tough time, and I just kind of shared with him, is like what he's going through, like you just can't, and the growth that exists in these types of situations, these environments. People will pay money to go to like courses and self-help and mastermind classes, but these types of events, these are core memories, iconic events that takes place in his life that you guys, you set it out there. And I think that's amazing, as you put your kids in a situation where they could benefit and grow and just thrive for generation, years to come.
Yeah, and you don't have to do something extravagant. That probably was. I mean, the school teachers were freaked out that the kids were going to miss 3 months of school. But when they got home, they wrote reports and did little presentations to their classes, and it was an amazing experience. And the teachers all said, "We're glad that you guys did that." But I was just going to say, you don't have to do something extravagant. There's plenty of local things that you can do as a family. We are just serve coordinators for our stake, and we adopted this Grace Temple Ministries here in Las Vegas. And the pastor that's been there 15 years serves the homeless. And so we go down early every other Saturday and hand out meals and clothes and shoes and coats
And talk to them
and visit with them.
Just be friends.
Well, and there was a family that showed up with their 3 young daughters. And what an amazing thing just to stand back and watch what they did for that 2 hours. And I think it was good for those that were, housing challenged.
Yeah.
To see a young family doing that, not just some old guy like me.
3 cute little girls handing out granola bars and saying, have a good day, and, just brighten and smile. I think that just brought a lot of happiness to those people.
So the point was, if you're struggling, everybody has challenges. For us, service
just kind of takes the focus off of your own challenges and puts you in a position where you can help other people. And so for a while, you can forget about your own challenges while you're helping other people. And it doesn't mean that they go away, but maybe it lessens the burden for a minute.
Yeah. It's funny we're talking about service, and I'd been telling my wife, a couple of weeks ago, I was like, man, we need to get our kids in some service opportunities just to break them out of their comfort zone and just help others. And, all the benefits that come from serving, and quit thinking of themselves. And, fortunately, like I said, it snowed here. We got a few inches. And so it gave us an opportunity to go just shovel some driveways, shovel some small walkways. And my kids, my 2 girls were with me, and they were like feeling that love and that joy and the warmth that comes from service. And, they had a smile on their face the whole time. They're like, "Daddy, are we doing a good job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you guys are doing great." And, they're like, "Hey, can we do one more house?" And so they kept going, and they kind of banded me on that last house. Well, when I was getting a little tired, but
they caught the vision.
Yeah, you picked it right there. Just do something. It doesn't have to be big. Yeah. Cookies go a long way.
I think one of the biggest lessons we've learned about service, because one opportunity leads to another, and people ask us all the time, how did you get involved, and how did it keep moving forward? And what we've learned is you take a step forward and you do what you need to do, and then another door will open with another opportunity, and you just choose to step through it and take that opportunity. And those doors keep opening, and those opportunities keep coming. And those are tender mercies and blessings from Heavenly Father. That's how He accomplishes His purposes, are through us. And if we're not willing to step through that door and step out of our comfort zone, we miss out on choice opportunities. And so, some of the things we've been able to do are amazing. And I'll just share a little. So back to this Grace Temple Ministries that we've been helping here in Las Vegas. We've created a great relationship with this couple, but we've also created a great relationship with other organizations and people. And one day a lady called me, who is a member of the Russian Orthodox Church here. She helped us with another project, and she called and said, "Julie, I have a bunch of coats and hats and gloves that people have gathered, and I have them all here, and I don't know what to do with them. Can you help me figure out what to do with them?" And I said, "Sure." And by the way, I'm in my car and I'm not too far from your house. Do you want me to just stop and pick him up? And she said, yeah. So I drove right there, picked him up, put him in my car. I wasn't even home before I received a text from the pastor's wife at Grace Temple Ministries that said, Julie, we have an urgent need right now for coats and hats and boots and gloves. And I said, Sheila, they're in my car. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, a member of the Russian Orthodox Church called a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and handed off some stuff so that we could have them off to the people that the members of Grace Temple Ministries serve. That's no coincidence.
Yeah. Oof.
That is Heavenly Father knowing that those unhoused people that next Saturday needed coats and hats and boots and gloves. And he triggered a whole series of events to make that happen.
And that's what makes life so thrilling, and a life of service, right? Where you can be used as this instrument to bring about something so much bigger and greater than you think or could create by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Just be open.
Yeah, being open to, yeah, like you said, going outside your comfort zone. I think that's where adventure really begins, right? Is where you're like, I'm a little uncomfortable doing this. And I'll give you an example, and hopefully people can kind of piggyback off this, simple gesture, right? So we are at the Goodwill this last summer, and I'm with I think one or two of my kids, I can't remember. And anyway, so we're getting ready to check out, and like, we're all kind of converging here, and I like tell this couple, I was like, oh, go ahead, you guys go first. And I'm talking to them as we're waiting in line, and they're from they're from Angola and Congo. And we get talking, and they have these like coupons that they were going to use, and they couldn't use both of them, right? So I'm like, hey, I'll just give me your coupon and I'll buy this, and just no big deal. And we get talking, and I invite them over to dinner, and they have this remarkable story. I should have them on the podcast, but long story short, they immigrate, they fly to Brazil, they're in a shelter for 2 weeks there, and then they make their way up through Bolivia and Costa Rica, and
Wow.
they were like in the jungles of Panama. He sent me like video. They were held at gunpoint. They saw people die on their journey. Just absolutely, I mean, the stuff you hear about, but you're never really that close to it. But anyway, they came over for dinner. I called my wife. I'm like, hey, can I bring some friends over? She's like, yeah, that's fine. So we bring them over, and they probably had like their first ever, enchiladas. But as we were wrapping up this dinner, I was just so thrilled that they'd come over, and their cute little girl, Olivia. But at the end of this meal, he's like, we've never been invited to Americans' home for dinner. And they'd been here there about a year, but he said it with like tears in his eyes. He's like, we will never forget this day. And it's like, my wife and I are like looking at each other. We're like tearing up, and it's just like, oh, gets you right there.
That's so just dinner and food and culture and language we love, and we like to immerse ourselves in that. And when we lived in Dubai, every Sunday and sometimes during the week, we would feed the kids from Pakistan or Africa or India or the Philippines, and then we involved them in helping us cook. And that turned into, our landlord was probably a little freaked out, but that turned into a great event just to socialize. And some of these kids hadn't had anybody to visit with or talk to. They just work, and then they send their money home.
And we should clarify, when Mike says kids, he means young adults.
Yeah.
Young adults that have left their country to go work in Dubai to try to support their whole family back home.
Yeah.
And our ward in Dubai had about 200 members, and we were from 52 different countries. And so here they are, all alone, working a job, living in shared accommodations, in the middle of COVID still, by the way. So there's not a lot of socialization that happens. And when church starts back up and we have permission to gather, then all of a sudden, they're able to come to a family style dinner all together and visit. And those were some faith building moments, especially when they start telling their stories like you shared with the people you met in
just feed somebody.
Oh, I love that you said that, Mike. Because at the end of the day, as you're talking, I got thinking about Revelations 3:19 and 20, and it's, Christ, he says, I'm at the door and I knock, right? And then in verse 20, which often goes like overlooked, it says like, that I may have sup with him, like supper, have dinner. And, you kind of painted this picture, and I'm thinking of like the young adults that you guys had over for dinner. They're all away from home. They don't have a mom and dad, and they see this couple that's welcoming Americans, nice, friendly, opening up their home with food. Not only are they bonding with you, and I'm sure you connect, maybe you do or don't keep in touch with them, but they also connected with their
all of them.
We do. They're on WhatsApp.
Sorry.
I'm not surprised. I mean, I have no doubt, or I have no question of why they'd want to keep in touch with you. You guys are great. But yeah, I think about that scripture where it's just like, if we really want to get to know someone, like let's sit down and have a meal and connect. And you guys did
And that's what, that's what Dubai is about, or the Middle East, I should say. It's a culture of tolerance, but they like to break bread together. They like to sit down and eat. One of my favorite friends and dear brothers from Dubai, he actually lives in Sharjah. Our last meal together, he said, I want to treat you to breakfast. And so we go, and it was chicken livers. And delicious, probably not my favorite, but you know what? It was the company, it was our conversation, and the fact that he loved me and was sad that we were leaving. So
I love that. I wish our culture here in the States was a little bit more, in fact, as I'm talking about this, there's a lady, she actually got baptized in the church that I met at the dollar store, and I just kind of invited her to dinner once in a Halloween party that I was throwing, and she's like, was so blown away that, I was like inviting her to these things, and she's like, I haven't felt this kind of warmth and hospitality since I lived in South Africa. And I'm just like, man, maybe I'm living in the wrong country. I'd love to experience that the warmth and hospitality. But we got to do our part where we live and lift where we stand, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Grow where you're planted. Just reach out. Just be kind, and feed someone. I think that's been our. We love doing that.
And because we're the state Just Serve specialists, we have to put a plug in there.
Please, yeah.
If you're not sure what to do or how to help somebody, go to justserve.org, put in your zip code, and it will pull up all of the projects that are happening in the near future around you. And you can pick and choose. There's so many out there that you can just say, oh, that's cool, I'll go show up for that one. It's awesome.
And
go ahead.
No, after you, please.
Well, I was just going to say, so with that young family at Grace Temple, were 3 airmen from the Air Force Base. And I said, how did you guys find out about this? And they said, there's this app called Just Serve. And so we thought this would be fun to come down and help out.
Nice.
It warmed my heart to see this, not just us or a religion, it's everybody.
Yeah.
It's the Just Serve is the church's gift to the community. And our role as Just Serve coordinators is to go out and find all of the nonprofits in our state boundaries, which includes churches, nonprofits, schools, and find out what their projects are and get them on Just Serve so people can come volunteer. And most of the volunteers are not members of our church. It's the community. And that's what we want to do is, get out of the cultural hall and into the community with all of those that want to serve by our sides.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
I love it. Thank you for that plug. I was going to ask you about that later. I was going to ask you a little bit about Just Serve, but you just did it. So thank you. Okay, so if we could kind of dig into your guys' timeline a little bit more. 2003, November to February, you guys are in Ecuador, have this
Yeah.
life-changing event. Maybe if you could just take us there a little bit and tell us more about that experience, and then what it was like to come back home.
It was pretty amazing. So when we got there to Ecuador, this group we went with were serving in 8 different orphanages. So a baby orphanage, a toddler orphanage, special needs orphanages, shelters for kids that were at risk or had been removed from their homes for whatever reason. And also like a daycare up in the mountains where all the parents were working in the field all day during the day, and the kids were kind of all left in one little school with one little person, and there were a lot of them. So anyway, there were other volunteers there, and we were all scheduled. It was a schedule that we got put into. And so, like I said, there were a lot of students that were taking a break from school or doing a semester study abroad kind of thing. And then there was our family of 6, And so some of the orphanages had very specific requirements. Me and our oldest daughter, who was 14 at the time, we mostly served in the baby orphanage. And there were 37 kids under the age of 2.
Wow.
And there were 2 nuns there that worked their hearts out trying to take care of these kids. So, we roll in there at 6:45 in the morning and we've got 37 hungry kids, and they need to be changed and fed and bathed. And so it's assembly line. And it was really hard for me at first because, they would say, you don't have time to stop and play with the kids. We'll do that later, which is hard because you're like, oh, but they need to be played with. But it would take us from like 7 until 10 to get them all fed, bathed, and dressed. And we started over again because they needed their diapers changed before lunch happened. And so we would work a 4 or 5 hour shift and then go home for lunch and then come back and do it again.
Wow. So was this you, your daughter, 2 nuns, and then anyone else?
Usually 1 or 2, maybe 3 other volunteers if we were lucky.
That
when
is
when the
astounding.
semesters changed, so we told you we were there over Christmas, so we had a little bit of influx of volunteers over Christmas, but then when the semester started back up, there was a 2-week period. There were no other volunteers except for our family, which meant my terrible Spanish that I just started learning in November had to be sufficient to communicate with the nuns by myself for a little while till we had another group come.
Sink or swim.
Yep.
Yeah.
I speak great orphanage Spanish, and that's it.
That's like me in missionary Spanish. El libro de Mormon.
Right.
See?
Yeah. Okay. So
I'll
then,
tell you where you ended up.
oh yeah, please, Mike. What's your
Well, so one of our other daughters and myself went to the special needs. So our oldest went to the toddlers by himself. We had special needs, meaning these kids, you had to put on this plastic apron in the morning and go clean them up, shower them off, and clean them up and get them dressed, and then feed them. And some of them were their arms, their hands didn't work. They were just laying in beds, and so you just kind of tip their head up and feed them.
The most handicapped, like completely dependent
Yeah.
kids of all ages.
And it was intense. I will admit, the first week I thought, what am I doing? What are we doing? And you realize they're special spirits, and somebody needs to help them. And I think the lady that was over that home, her name was Sister Light, and she was just an amazing person. And they were all amazing. One of the head nuns said, when the police would call and say somebody left a baby on the bus, and it was tough economic times there, but somebody left this baby on the bus, and she says, we'll try the others. And if not, if you can't find anybody that will take this baby, then we will. So she had great faith that somebody would provide and be there. So yeah, so that was an amazing experience. And some of them have passed away. We always get a note when one of them passes away, but we agreed when we left or built the orphanage later that we would keep those special needs kids for life. That was part of our agreement with the local municipality.
So on that note, I'll just keep telling you that story a little bit.
Yeah.
So we were there until February. Those special needs kids kind of bounced from house to house and worker to worker, which was a little bit hard. And so we were there for 3 months and just fell in love with everybody. And then we left. And really, when we went to Ecuador, we kind of thought this was a one and done kind of thing. Like, this was a big deal. We just did. And it took everything we had to leave. It was rough.
Well,
we did not want to leave.
We got in a big argument because Jordan wanted to bring 14 kids home, and I had 8 special needs, and Julie had at least 20 of the 40 babies.
But we knew we couldn't bring them home, and we came home really tear-filled, came home and had some interesting experiences as we came home a couple weeks after we got back. That same son that told us we should pray about the four-wheelers, one day we were driving to a movie. We hadn't seen a movie, and he said something like, why are we going to a movie? This is kind of pointless. We miss our kids. We could be there taking care of the kids. And I thought, oh my gosh, out of the mouth of babes. He's right. But we struggled for a while. And then we realized we needed to do something more about it. And so we started a conversation with the group that we served with. Sorry, I feel a little emotional there. My nose is running.
No, we talked to them, and they said, okay, let's start a foundation, or we have a foundation, and we'll partner with yours, and let's see if we can't build something. So
I remember the day we sat in our living room, and he said, I've looked at this before. It's expensive. It's hard. There's a lot of red tape, but let's make a plan and see if we can accomplish that plan. And so we sat in our living room, and Mike and I committed to go raise $500,000. And I'm like, we're not fundraisers, but that was what he needed. And he said, I will go start working with the government and see if we can get approval to build an orphanage specifically for those handicapped kids.
Wow.
Because they're the ones that get bumped around from place to place. And so, we made that commitment. And 2 weeks later, Mike's driving in the car with somebody that's training as a financial advisor with him. And they're just having this little discussion. And he says to Mike, I need to introduce you to my cousins, because their dad created a foundation, and the purpose of that foundation is to help kids around the world. Maybe they can help you. And so he did. He made that connection, and we went to dinner and met these people, and they were super nice. And they're like, fill out this application and we'll just see what happens. And, we got home late, and I'm like, I'm filling out that application tonight. So
you're feeling it. You're like, let's go.
Yes. But they were hard to read. We weren't sure, and that's a lot of money, and it's a long shot, but I submitted the application, and they called a couple of days later, and they said, we can't give you the full amount that you're asking for, but we can give you half. Will that help? And I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like, we don't know what to do now.
Wow. Okay.
So that started.
If I have this right, it sounds like, okay, Mike, you get set up with someone that, has a background in this, right? Like
I was training him. Yeah, I was just training him, and his uncle had been doing some humanitarian stuff, and so he made that connection.
Yeah.
And long story short, they got half, and you know, a year later, every week they would meet and plan and talk and discuss. And then I just started asking friends, neighbors, family, and we ended up with the full amount to build this place. So, and it's there today. It's still functioning. The guy that runs it with his wife, he's been the bishop 3 times in that town at different times. And anyway, they're just good people, and we love to go. We don't go as often as we should, maybe, but
so we opened the doors of that orphanage in 2007. The government gave us permission to move all of those handicapped kids into the orphanage. And they asked us if we would also take some healthy babies. And, you know, at the time, Ecuador was starting to come out of its financial crash, but there were still a lot of infants around, and most of them, if they were adopted, they weren't adopted out until they were like 4 or something. So we did. So we took in healthy babies and these handicapped kids and opened that orphanage and had a great big community celebration. It was amazing. And then started working. There were 3 groups now. So Mike and I was the project lead for that whole orphanage project. The family foundation that donated a lot of the money became a partner. They ended up spending a whole lot more money than they committed, but that was their choice after as time went on. And then Orphanage Support Services Organization, that's the group that we served with in Ecuador. And they're the ones in the country that still run the orphanage to this day and serve, you know, have volunteers that serve in other orphanages too. And by the way, we created a short-term volunteer program. So if anyone's interested in going and serving with them, just Google orphanage-support-services.org and look at the Ecuador program. It's amazing.
Orphanages support.
Orphanage-support-services.org.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
OSSO, Orphanage Support Services Organization.
Okay.
And we're not, yeah, that wasn't a paid plug either. We're just sorry. We're probably getting too deep a dive into what you're wanting to accomplish.
Good. I mean, my podcast, it gets like thousands of views. I'm just kidding. It gets like 10. So
you know what? And a shout out to the cute couple that introduced us, Brad and Sandy. We love those guys. Yeah. I met him in a chow line at Scout Camp of all places.
We love them. Yeah, they're actually their episode's gonna air here before yours. So people that are really tuned into the show, they're gonna know exactly who you're talking about.
Cool.
Okay. So I guess this is my question, and you kind of answered it. Okay, so you had this amazing experience in 2003. You come back in February of 2004. And you're just kind of like feeling the pains of leaving. And then, you know, like you'd said with your son going to the movies, he's like, what are we doing here? Like, and then kind of leads to this Orphanages Support Services Organization that you guys started. And that was 2007.
Yeah, we opened the orphanage, but Orphanage Support Services Organization had been around a lot longer than we have. We didn't start that. That was already there. But they're the ones that run the orphanage and run all of the programs right now. Our role in that was to get the funding and help get the orphanage built. And when funds get sparse, then you see Mike and Julie fundraising again. but
yeah, we wanted to do more or do something. And these guys that we had met that helped with that project, we get a call. Julie gets a call, and you know, because she's a nurse, he said, "Can you come to Ethiopia on Saturday and help us set up a medical clinic?" And this was on Tuesday.
And I'm thinking, okay, now Ethiopia's in Africa, but you know, what are we doing? So
we looked at each other and said, "Let's do it. You do it." So I made sure, you know, she had somebody pick her up at the airport in Dubai. We didn't necessarily know much about Dubai. And anyway, she flew into Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and proceeded to set up a medical clinic.
So this was 2009. And so, they just said, you're a nurse, you're not afraid to travel. We've been asked to take over a clinic, a nutrition center, and a group that has a high-risk children's orphanage, like kids that were removed again for, because they were in potential harm's way. And we need somebody to come help us evaluate this and try to figure out what it looks like. So this same family foundation, the dad that started it and a couple of his daughters that were, adults at that time, were going to evaluate it. So I jumped in and went with them. Mm-hmm. And that was the start of our Ethiopia venture. So, I told you Ecuador we thought was a one and done, and then it wasn't. And then another door opened and we found ourselves in Ethiopia. And over the next, we're still going to Ethiopia and we're still going to Ecuador. It will never end. We just keep adding places. But over those years in Ethiopia, we've had the opportunity to start a clinic to help the kids that were in this orphanage, for lack of a better word, that were vulnerable. And we also were able to meet a young man from the US that was helping street boys. And at the time that we met him, there were 26 street boys that he himself had rented a house and was helping. And they were as young, I think the youngest one at that time was 6. And the oldest ones were early teenagers. And they were living on their own. They were boys that were from rural areas, that it was a time of drought and food was sparse, and they were the older ones of their family, and they left to try to find something in the city. And there's because the grass is always greener on the other side, so you get to the city and it's the same. There's a drought and there's a food shortage and there's not a lot of people to help you. And they run across this young man who is there because his parents had adopted a couple of kids from Ethiopia and they were waiting for their visas to come through. And so he stayed in the city waiting for these siblings to get permission to travel, and ended up being there for several years, actually, because he fell in love with these street boys. So when I met him, we committed to help him. And we started raising funding and buying school supplies and helping him set up this house that he had rented. We went and bought mattresses from the market and things like that, just to kind of try to give these boys some sense of home, and some food to eat, which, like I said, was hard. But in that process, one of those 26 boys had some handicaps. And as a nurse, I, focused right in on that boy because I wanted to know what was going on. And long story short, he's our son now. If you look at our family picture, he's right there. His name is Taye,
which means found in Amharic in the local language.
Was that a nickname that you guys gave him, or he was born with that?
That was his name. We didn't know that connection.
Taye Eshatu. So yeah, it was an amazing thing, and I just have to tell you, our community has, half of them been, it's a small community, but half have been to the orphanage there. Some help with the boys in Addis. Most of them, all of them have been through university. A lot of them have been on missions.
The boys.
And the young man that's like our son that has been their caretaker, so to speak, he's not of our faith, but a faithful man, and he just says, do something, and if you go to that church over there, they teach you good principles, and so it's been kind of amazing to see that come full circle. So one of those young men, Berhanu, which name also means light, he is the branch president and helps take care of some of those needs.
Right now, he is.
Yeah. Today.
So we started out with this young man from the US that was taking care of him. He hired a couple other Ethiopians to help him. And that's the other young man that Mike's talking about. His name is Muse, which is Moses. And when I first met Muse, he was pretty much agnostic, but now is a great member of the Orthodox religion, the Ethiopian Orthodox religion, has great faith. And Muse is only 37.
Yeah.
And he's raised about 50 sons.
Wow.
He's not married yet.
We need to find him a good late. You know, maybe I can see why he's not married.
Yeah, but now those
kidding.
sons are mostly raised, and he can focus on dating.
Yeah, we committed.
We razz him all the time.
We committed to help those boys get through, you know, their education and be out on their own, and they are. There's a couple still that are just about finished, but the problem is still there in Ethiopia. There's still a need for help there. There's a need for that kind of help in a lot of countries, in Africa and other places. And so that, you know, that's just we just got lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Well, so if you ask us how many kids we have, we're like, well, we have 4 legally. We have several that we call our sons. We have 36 in Ecuador, and we have 25 in Ethiopia. And now we have this whole group of young adults from Dubai. I've lost track.
A lot of Christmas cards going out.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. Okay, so I know you guys, okay, just to recap for those that maybe are just tuning in or fast forwarding. Okay, so you did okay, so 2003, 2004, that winter break, you spent Christmas and 3 months there in Ecuador. And then 2007-ish, you're getting the funding to build a orphanage there in Ecuador. And then did you live in Ecuador in 2009? Because I thought, no, okay.
We just went back and forth a lot.
That was
Mike, that's
blame me. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. And then 2015-ish, is that when you guys were in Ethiopia?
From 2009 until present.
Wow. Okay. But during that time,
back and forth.
Okay, back and forth. Gotcha. And then how about you share a little bit about this health project that you guys are doing in Cambodia?
So in 2015, we had an acquaintance that introduced us to a member of one of the ministries, government ministries in Cambodia. And his name's Panera. We talked to Panera and said, what do you need? Because he reached out and said, we need some help with medical stuff. And he explained to me that there are 1,500 rural clinics on the outskirts of Phnom Penh. And this is where most of the people get their health care, is at these rural clinics. But most of the rural clinics, they have at least one trained provider, whether that's a midwife or a doctor or even a nurse that has learned how to, deliver babies. But they have people from their village that walk in for all kinds of care all the time. And there are just some very basic things that they don't know how to do. So if you, for instance, the very first little hospital that I went to, and it's little, they had people there on IVs, and they had people that were walking in for like a doctor's visit, and they had people in another area that were having their babies. And so, they have one trained person, and then they have a bunch of villagers that have come to help and just have learned through time how to help some of these people. But they didn't know some of the basic skills. And so we went and visited with them and said, what do you need? What are some of the things that you wish you knew how to do? And the thing they identified is neonatal resuscitation, which sounds like a big, huge technical thing. But basically, when a baby is born not breathing, you might need to plug Mike's battery in here, or your cord in so our iPad doesn't die. Anyway, when a baby's born not breathing, they basically need CPR on a newborn to get their heart started and get them breathing. And Cambodia has a huge infant mortality rate because that is not something they know how to do.
Wow.
So at the time, I was teaching in the nursing program at Weber State University, got permission to put together a study abroad project with bachelors, people that were in their bachelor's degree for nursing. And we went over to Cambodia for 10 days, and we taught about 300 healthcare providers how to do CPR on newborns and a few other things. And we weren't really sure how it was going to go, if it was going to work out well or not. We had some interesting hitches in the road along the way. But the next year, when we took our students back, we had asked those places to keep records or to report back somehow. And one of them was really good about that record keeping. A lady that in one of the bigger hospitals that delivered about 200 babies a month, which is a lot of babies to deliver in a month. She said to me, the year we didn't, like, all of the babies that struggled the year before you came, most of them died because we couldn't get them where they needed to be fast enough to get care. We always sent them, but they never survived. And she said, this year we used the techniques you taught us. We had 25 babies born not breathing. 23 of them we were able to resuscitate right on the spot. They didn't have any issues. They went home with their moms just like normal. And I said, okay, now give me the hard news about the two, you know? And she said, no, you taught me how to use a bubble CPAP to transport a baby. And I used that bubble CPAP, and we transported those two babies, and those two babies lived.
Oh my gosh. I'm getting
And
a
I
little
thought,
here.
oh my gosh, it worked. I can't believe it worked, but it did.
Man.
And so that was miraculous. But over the next several years, we went back and I've lost track, but we've taught over 1,000 providers those same techniques. And each time we go back, they come back to me and say, well, now we need to know regular CPR for adults, and we need to know, you know, how to read, to do handheld ultrasounds in case a baby's struggling, and we need help with pediatrics, and we need, you know, I have a list of like 57 things they need to learn, but some of them are really basic things, basic first aid, those kinds of things.
I'm just so astonished at the amount of good that you and your team have done. Like, because, okay, obviously you're saving lives, right? Like literally saving lives by teaching these trainings, right? These methods. And then not only that, but you're impacting the the family directly, right? Like you don't have moms that have been carrying babies for 9, 8, 7 months, whatever it is, going home empty-handed and living with this, guilt and remorse and bitterness, or whatever it is. So, I mean, 200 babies a month, and then you said 25 of them, and that's just in the one hospital or clinic, whatever it was. Yeah.
And who knows, one of those babies may grow up to be a school teacher or invent something or just work on the farm. And I apologize to everybody that's listening, Andy. Our battery's running out, so Julie went to find the right cord. and one thing, Josh, that was really important that Julie said at first. We may think we know what people need, and you can if you listen. And that's the key. Is they went in and were listening. They asked, "What do you need?" Not like, "Okay, we're going to teach this and this and this." They just said, "All right, tell us what would be most helpful to you."
Great.
So,
because I think so often people that are educated and coming from America or a more developed country can very easily come in and be like, okay, this is what you need, this is how it's going to work out, and dot dot dot. But yeah, first you listened, and then you took action. So, man, that is remarkable.
It kind of goes back to the conversation we had a little bit earlier about unintended consequences. Along the way, we've learned that even though we see a need and we see how it can be met, sometimes when we meet that need, it has those unintended consequences. And so to avoid that, we're going in and asking and doing an assessment and trying to figure out what they say they need and how we can best meet that need closest to what they've expressed. Because we don't know all of those circumstances. You know, and if you can educate somebody, that lady that saved those 25 babies, a year later, she said, when you come back next time, I want to go with you and I want to participate in teaching those other people. And I'm like, perfect. We have a champion in the country and she has great experience, more than I do. You know?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. The impact you guys have made, I mean, just there, and then, you know, Ecuador and Ethiopia. I mean, it is, you know, I think of the quote by Winston Churchill, I think, and he says, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." And
Perfect.
you guys are living proof of that. Is just like, and I tell my kids all the time that it's just like relationships and service and, you know, our relationship with God, like these are the things that matter most, and you guys are living proof of that. um
You know, we get asked by a lot of people, how do I go do something big like this? And I tell them it doesn't have to be big. Like it just happened. Those big things just happened for us. But what matters is that you find a need wherever it is and you fill it. And your purpose and your path is going to be completely unique to you. Ours is unique to us, but it's not a path that most people walk. Um,
But you
but
go shovel snow.
there's so much good that can be done right now, today, if we just stop and look around and decide to do something. And so it's, you don't have to do this big planning thing and make this big spectacular thing happen. You know, you just need to be willing.
I'm going to share, you know, I'll just share some ideas to maybe our guests that are they're listening in, of things that I've seen or either been a part of that are just easy. Like, I think here in America, where we've got so much abundance and excess, that even just putting a simple Facebook post like, "Hey, I met this family from Angola and Congo, and they need some stuff. You know, feel free to Venmo me, or if you have any extra stuff, you know, that's easy. Clothes drives, blankets, Halloween costumes, school supplies. Like, there's so many people that have some of this stuff that's laying around, and I'm kind of guilty of this too. Like, you know, here we are kind of snowed in, and we're cleaning out the house, and it's like, should we donate this or is it trash? It's like, you know, probably a lot of it isn't trash, and it could be used by other people. But man,
Great idea.
and then going back
Great.
to what you said earlier, Mike, I mean, I think just offering a simple meal to people, or sometimes it's a phone call. Like, there's so much, as I'm talking with you, I'm figuring out, or it's further impressed upon my mind that there is so much need out there, and that it doesn't take, you know, something dramatic or grandiose for us to fill that need.
And the gospel is simple. And if you know, we look at President Nelson and the things that he's taught us, it's the simple things of the gospel. And that's why I say it doesn't need to be some big thing. Just think simply. I mean, really, who did Jesus stop and help? The people he was walking by, you know, on the side of the road, the people. I mean, he didn't go seek out these giant experiences. I mean, you know, he had a little more knowledge than we did about what was going on, but it was just those simple little acts of kindness that turned into great things and great faith building moments for those around him and for those people that he helped.
Yeah, I think of the quote by President Thomas S. Monson, and maybe he didn't say it, but I know he said it. And he said, "Those who give money give much; those who give of time give more; those who give of themselves give all." And again, you guys are living proof of that. So I guess, you know, another question I have, two other questions maybe, and then I'll let you go. You know, you talked about the orphanage support services organization. And then is there any other groups that you're like, hey, if you guys want to do something that we like that we've done, or maybe it's something that you've just thought about doing yourself, what groups are they? That maybe the guest can look up and say, hey, I'm going to look into ...
Yeah. And so for the Ecuador connection and a Thailand connection, that orphanage support services.org is a good one. We also established a foundation, arisecharities.org. We just do kind of some of our own little projects and take people with us. It's not like some big planned out thing. So we do that. But then as far as local things go, I think, sometimes we worry about helping organizations that are already established because we worry about administrative costs and things like that. But there are a lot of really good organizations out there that don't do that don't take money off the top, that truly help people. So if you look at your local homeless shelters and, the rescue missions and those kinds of things, go help them. They've established good practices and can get the help to the people that really need it. And you have to do a little bit of your own homework and vetting. But, for a while, I interacted with the person that was in charge of all the nonprofits for the state of Utah. And there's 6,000 nonprofits in the state of Utah. And they're all trying to do something similar. And I'm like, we got to get everybody together. We could do so much good here. So if you can find an organization that you can volunteer through or donate with, please do. Because a lot of the people that we take with us different places will say to us, if I had only realized how great the need was, the money that I spent on my airline ticket to come and have this experience with you could have done so much more good. And I know people want to have that experience, but sometimes really, the money makes a big difference. And I'm not saying just only do that, but if you're looking for something specific, look for those groups. And one way to vet them is through Just Serve. So the church donated that to the community, and a lot of those organizations are vetted before those projects are put out there. So there's one way to help you figure out who.
Kind of an easy fell swoop of who to work with and kind of find your niche, where you fit in.
Mm-hmm.
I think one more is the school districts. So Las Vegas is a large school district, and there's close to 12,000 homeless school kids, which it just blows my mind that happens today. And some are couch surfing, some live in the cars, some are, family situations have caused that. So there's members down here that have been doing a blanket raise for years, and our neighbors happen to be anchors for a local news station, and we got together with them, and we're able to double and triple the amount of blankets that we got for these kids, but it still was short.
But that school district, the Title I office that deals with homeless students, they also gather all kinds of things for those kids. They try to put together their backpacks and try to put together snacks and food and things that they can send with them, just to kind of help them out along the way. So those are good places too. One other that Mike actually served on the board for a while is the Stella Oaks Foundation. That's President Oaks was raised by a single mom. His dad was a doctor and died when the kids were young, and the mom raised those kids, and this foundation has been established in her honor, and they help single moms that are trying to get an education so they can better care for their families. So that's another one. That's a great one. And there's so many out there, but
yeah, I'm sure people that are listening to this that aren't members of our faith are going to be like, is this an ad for the Church of Jesus Christ?
I know, right? Sorry.
It's okay, because at the end of the day, I don't really care which church, people affiliate themselves with, like, a whole heck of a lot. But I tell people all the time, like, our church is the best kept secret. And yeah, I mean, like you said, the Just Serve, it's a gift to the community, right? These different organizations have been vetted, and you just kind of see where your heart draws you to, where you're,
Oh.
convicted, right? And go for it.
And
There
the
you go.
other thing is, speaking of those other churches, there are interfaith groups in almost every city that get together and do things.
Yeah.
Find one of those. How fun is that?
Yeah.
We have a lot of friends from other religions that we have so much in common with and that we love discussing. And when we can all get out together and serve together, that's just, the icing on the cake.
Yeah. Oh man, you guys have lived a full life in your short time here on Earth, man. Unbelievable.
Well, we got some years left. We're going to keep going until we get kicked off the planet.
Very good. Okay. So the other website you shared is called risingcharities.org.
Nope. Arise. So ARISE charities.org.
Risecharities.org.
Yeah.
That stands for advocates
For responsibility, independence, self-reliance, and education.
Very good. Man, so good. You've given me a lot to think about and how I'm going to raise my kids and, what kind of experiences I want to expose them to. Um, I'll leave you with this. We were in church the other day and we were talking. And this one guy was saying how this one guy was telling him, "Hey, I want to make my kids' lives as comfortable as possible." And I joked around. I was like, "No, like I want to make my kids as comfortable as possible." And they'll probably attest to that as I try to get them to clean up every day. And in fact, today I'm trying to tell them, I'm like, yeah, us cleaning up, it's like we're serving mommy. So it's not just mommy that has to do this. That didn't go over too well. But
I can imagine.
and here, this will be my last kind of plug for, how the organization of our church works. I get a text from this brother that I'm supposed to seek after and look after. It's called ministering in our church. His wife's been in the hospital, and I told him, he texted me about an hour ago. I was like, "Hey, his wife's in the hospital. She's coming home tomorrow." And I asked him if I could help and bring my, 7, 9, and 5-year-old over to help clean up the house. And I'm still not sure if he's going to take me up on the offer. He said like, "Hey, appreciate it." But so I'm going to be a little bit more persistent. But again, that's just another thing I love about this organization is that we are so service minded, or should be. I don't want to say, "Oh, I'm so service minded," but the organization is, and you find remarkable people like yourselves, scattered through this world that is in need of so much help. So, Mike, Julie, thank you guys for taking time to share, of your travels and your service opportunities. They say service, they say it's like wetting your pants. Everybody knows you did it, but only you get that warm feeling.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, how about this? How about I give you guys the last word of someone that's like maybe on the fence about a little reluctant or not so sure they want to dive headfirst into this volunteer service thing because they're in their comfort zone. They're happy and they like where they're at, and it's a little scary for them. What are your guys' words of wisdom for them?
Do it anyway, because you don't know what you're missing till you try. And if you really hate it, you don't have to do it again. But I guarantee you won't. There's nothing like being there to help somebody else in their time of need. And they're going to turn around and help you when you're in your time of need too. So just do it.
And so I'm going to say feed somebody, and you don't have to have them over to the house. Just put some food on the doorknob, or look for those that need a hand up. And if you can't do that, pray for them.
Yeah.
We're all in this together. Doesn't matter what religion. We're all children of our Father in heaven.
And everybody needs something.
Yeah. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to relive, and it's done me some good just to think about.
No, I have gained, and I'm certain our guests or our audience has gained as well. So thank you, Mike and Julie. If people want to get in contact with you, or if they want to, maybe help your fundraising, how would they do that?
They could go, well, that website is active, arisecharities.org. There's a thing at the bottom where you can just email us, or just put an email and somebody will reach out.
We're co-founders of that organization and I'm on the board, so you'll find us.
Well, I'm sure you're gonna have some people reaching out. So again, Mike and Julie, thank you so much for your time. Love you guys and love what you're doing, and wish you guys all the best.
Thank you so much.
We love
God
you
bless
too.
you.
Good luck with those cute girls.
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye. Real quick, I want to say thank you for tuning in and also ask for a favor. If you enjoyed the show, I'd ask that you would hit the subscribe button. It helps us scale the guests, it helps us grow the production. And if you really enjoyed it, please consider donating to the show by finding me on Venmo at Josh-Pratt. That's at JOSH-PRATT. I will repay your kind gesture by making sure that this show gets better and better. Thank you so much.